Try this again. Here we go.
Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can.
Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Garrett Sedano, and I have back on the show Matt Wilk, who is the president of GetKidsBackToSchool.org, that works to support policies and identify candidates who will better our education for all students in the state of Michigan. So welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously there's still a lot going on in the media cycle. It just seems like every time we get up in the morning, there's something new. And kind of what's highlighting across not only the state of Michigan, but across the country is a lot of these school boards, these woke school boards, as we call them, have dug their heels in the sand against some of President Trump's executive orders with, men competing in women's sports and boys and girls' locker rooms and restrooms. And the list goes on and on. So what's on your radar of what's going on, my man?
So my organization is helping parents and activists assert the rights of young girls under Title IX. It requires a little bit of an education session. So Title IX's been around. It's Title IX of the Higher Education Act. It's been around since 1972. And the example that I give to everybody is this. Could a school, if it wants to, have a basketball team, a singular basketball team? May the best 12 people win? The answer is they can't. They can't do that. And why can't they? What law tells them they can't do that? Title IX does. Title IX protects the rights of young women. So that was uncontroversial for about 44 years. Then the Biden administration comes along and says, nope, we are now defining a transgender person, a boy with gender dysphoria, as a girl for the purposes of this statute. Flew in the face of absolutely every case that involved it. But that's what they went with. And very shortly thereafter, Michigan Department of Education and school boards around our state adopted that right away, immediately, because a lot of them believe in that that's their ideology. And so, November comes, Trump wins, comes in January, the most amazing inauguration day you could ever possibly have, signing executive orders in a crowd. And one of them talked about reversing that immediately. Now, the Biden executive order had been thrown out by the courts. Every court that looked at it threw it out. And that it doesn't matter. So the school districts in Michigan are digging in their heels. They're going to do what they want. And they're going to say, well, it's legally complicated. It'll be in front of the courts. But there's a mechanism for parents to object. And that mechanism is through the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. So as of yesterday, or as of last week, there was an article, Right News, that we talked about the 4 districts that we had filed against, which is Plymouth Canton, Heartland, Rochester, and Mount Pleasant. Oddly, Mount Pleasant has a very permissive policy. But promised you breaking news. So the breaking news is, as of yesterday, we added 2 to that list. Walled Lake Consolidated is now on that list, and Lowell Area Schools is now on that list. So those complaints have been filed with the Office of Civil Rights, and they're now investigating.
Wow. Good for you. And it's frustrating because I've been watching these school boards just like you have over the years. And right when President Biden signed the executive order, they ran with the narrative like, hey, we're just following what the president is telling us to do. We have to do this. And I saw parents stand up and say, this is unfair. I can't believe we're doing this. And they just continue to say, nope, we're just doing what the president says. Now it's been switched. The executive order, throwing out the door, a new one, can't do this anymore. And they're digging their heels in the sand. And so I want to show a couple of these school boards. First, one of my favorites is Rochester, which is a very, very nasty woke school board. Watching them over the years and what they have done and how they just basically stiff-armed parents when they have stood up. So I want to show this and I want to talk about this. 1 second.
And I'm a parent of a child in the district. I wanted to talk to you tonight about gender ideology and about our school's current position and practices, which I find deeply unacceptable. I'm writing to express my deep disappointment in your failure to uphold the rights and protections of all students, particularly biological girls within our schools. It's our expectation as parents that you comply with President Trump's executive orders regarding gender policies and ensure that biological boys are not allowed to use girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, or compete in their sports. Furthermore, under no circumstances should biological boys ever be allowed to share hotel rooms with girls on overnight field trips. Board members Jessica Gupta and Michelle Buelltel on 1/29/25 stated to me directly that biological boys were in fact allowed to share hotel rooms with girls and that parents were merely notified ahead of time. This is completely unacceptable. Parents should not be put in a position where they are simply informed of such policies rather than given a say in protecting their daughter's privacy and safety. I would like to know what the current process is for forcing a biological boy into a girl's hotel room. Who makes this decision? What criteria are used? Are parents allowed to opt out, or is this decision made without their consent? These are serious concerns that demand immediate answers and corrective action. Your role is to protect and provide a safe and fair learning environment for every student, and that includes safeguarding the rights of biological girls. By allowing biological males into female spaces, athletic competitions, and overnight accommodations, you are not only compromising fairness, but also neglecting your duty to represent and protect all students equally. Additionally, by violating President Trump's EOs on gender policies, the RCS BOE is putting more than $5 million in federal funding at risk. This reckless disregard for compliance could have serious financial consequences for our district, impacting all students and educational programs. It is unseemly that you jumped into following ex-President Biden's Title IX EO rewrite on pushing boys into girls' spaces, knowing full well that they were being challenged. And now you claim that you will not follow President Trump's EOs because they may be challenged. Your hypocrisy and political maneuvering is stunning and unacceptable. We expect you to take immediate action to correct these issues and align school policies with common sense protections for girls. Parents are paying attention, and we will hold this board accountable for decisions that fail to prioritize the well-being of our children. I urge you to stand up for all students, including biological girls, and ensure their rights, privacy, and safety are not disregarded.
I mean, it's insane what they're doing.
I remember back a long time ago when I was a adolescent male in middle school, I would have loved to have shared a hotel room with a girl at that point. That wasn't allowed. And for someone to sit there and say, not only is it allowed, it's a good thing, we have to do it, is ridiculous. Let me bring one thing up that you people hear a lot about, and that is Michigan's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act.
Correct.
And lots of districts have said, oh, no, we can't do anything because of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. Okay. So what I tell people to do is, let's go back into the 1950s. In the 1950s, the federal government decided that schools should not be segregated. Okay. And they ordered it. They passed a law. The law said you can't do that. And at that point in the South, most states had a law that said schools cannot be integrated. Which law prevails? The federal one or the state one? And the answer is clearly the federal law prevails. Article 6, Section 2 of the Michigan Constitution, or the United States Constitution, is the supremacy clause. It is the supreme law of the land. So the federal government has given young girls certain rights. You have the right to private spaces, locker rooms, and bathrooms. You have the right to private athletics. And that's not new. That has been set forth in regulations that have been on the Department of Justice website for decades. Because there's a lot of debate and discussion over what that means, right? So there was a lot of, hey, how many lockers do you have in the boys' locker room versus the girls' locker room? How many shower stalls do you have? What's the size of it? And it all had to be fair and equal. So now you can't tell me that state law can come in and say, well, yeah, but we've come to this other determination. And oh, well, sorry, young ladies, it doesn't work that way. State law is overridden by federal law to the contrary.
It amazes me that, obviously the majority of the American people don't want what a lot of these Democrats continue to try to force feed down our throats. And I really thought after the election, when President Trump not only won the Electoral College, but also the popular vote, that the Dems would have kind of went back and said, you know what, man, we can't be pushing this radical left ideology anymore. We're going to continue to lose elections. And they literally doubled down. They've doubled down on their insanity. And it's almost as if they live in their little reality, their small echo chambers, and they think that's what's true and what people want. And unfortunately, several years ago, when we really didn't have control of a lot of the social media, like X and Facebook and everything else, when conservatives were censored and deplatformed for speaking out against this, they kind of created their own kind of reality, their own echo chamber. Because when they would post something like, Alyssa Slotkin or Governor Whitmer or Dana Nessel or Jocelyn Benson, all you would see is love on the comments. And, oh, we love you and we support you. And then Elon Musk bought X, which was known as Twitter. And then now there's accountability. So whenever they post anything, it's just, they just get held accountable. And there's hate and everything else because people are frustrated. But they're probably going, what's going on? Like I didn't have to deal with this several years ago. Well, it's a reality check time. And I'm frustrated that they continue to dig their heels in the sand, like Rochester School Board. And then we got Wixom Elementary. You talked about Mount Pleasant. Is that the Chippewa Valley School District?
Chippewa
That's
Valley's in Macomb County. Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant. To your point, Mount Pleasant starts their board meetings to this day with a land acknowledgement.
Wow.
So the thing you saw at the Oscars that everyone made fun of, we're on the land of the blah blah blah. That they start every board meeting with that.
Wow. Wow.
And they just don't get it. Whatever.
Chippewa's because of Central Michigan. That's
yeah,
why
sure.
Yeah, that's why. Boo on Central Michigan because I'm a Western Michigan guy, by the way. But it is amazing. But as they continue to double down on this stuff, they're just really hurting their chances. And if Republicans message the right way and folks like you continue to do what you're doing and bring awareness to this, thank you so much for what you're doing, by the way. It's so needed, identifying good candidates and policies and everything else. And it takes, ordinary people like yourself to do extraordinary things to inspire change in this state and our country. So thanks, Matt, for everything that you do, obviously. So you said that you filed this against these several schools, right? What's on the agenda next then? What happens?
No, the next step that happens is the Office of Civil Rights contacts the people. One of the complaints is in my name, and they already contacted me, say, hey, can we get a couple pieces of paper? Yep, no problem. Send it along. This is interesting is that it's a policy-based complaint. Previous complaints were always, well, my daughter went in the bathroom and she saw a boy and it bothered her. And then the question was, how much or how often is it going on? Is this person still in the school? That's not the complaint here. The complaint here is you have a policy that allows a violation of Title IX, that sanctions a violation of Title IX. And you have to rescind that policy or else. And what is the or else under the Office of Civil Rights? And this is on their website. And it says very clearly, if you don't want to comply with Title IX, okay, you just don't receive any federal funding. So they come in and say, hey, look, you've got this policy. It's a problem. We don't like it. I think it violates, it's not just about the people not liking it. It's that it violates a very important law, a hard fought right. I'm the father of a female athlete that women that predated her, like my mother, her grandmother, fought very hard to make sure women could play sports. And now what you're saying is women can only play sports if they happen to not be around a boy with gender dysphoria. Because this all started, this kind of was really triggered with the story about in Maine. I don't know if you saw it. There was a male pole vaulter who in his junior year finished 5th. His senior year, he decided he had gender dysphoria and he was going to compete against the women and got first place in the state. And the president of the United States, Donald Trump, called out the governor of Maine at a governor's meeting and said, hey, is the governor of Maine here? Like, you need to knock this off. This is ridiculous. And she said, well, we have a state law. And he said, well, look, I mean, we have a state law, but there's also a federal law. And that's me. And she said, we'll see you in court. And they will see you in court. Now, here's the interesting thing. Who's the plaintiff here? It's not a person. It's the United States government. So if Rochester Community Schools or any of these other ones want to go to court, when the plaintiff is the Department of Education Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Justice, I suppose they can do it. But parents in Rochester should understand there's millions of dollars at risk because they want to toe the line on this ideology. And there's another important thing that we sort of haven't talked about that really is galvanizing parents. Have you seen our test scores?
Yeah.
They're awful. They're awful. 42nd in the country out of the state of Michigan. Are you kidding me? And we're spending our time and energy defending having boys with gender dysphoria play girls' sports. That's what we're spending our time doing, not focusing on, I don't know, reading, writing, math. And that's what really fries parents, because there's only a certain amount of energy they have to put towards these things. And what are you working towards? Are you working towards making sure that you have the proper DEI programs in place? Or are you making sure, I don't know, that all kids of any color and background and religion can read and write and do math and science and history and everything else? And that really fries parents.
That is so true. Okay. And because if this woke indoctrination crap, they continue to force feed down the kids and the parents' throats, if the kids' test scores were amazing and we were leading the country and we were leading the world, we probably wouldn't have a leg to stand on with a lot of this stuff. We'd be like, well, it's working, obviously, and but it's not. It's confusing kids. You're not focused on what truly needs to be focused on with the math, science, reading, everything, right? So for them just to continue to double down, you can tell that they're just pushing, like you said, an ideology and not what's good for all students. And they're making decisions for a very, very small percent that's jeopardizing the whole, which is wrong. You should not be able to do this.
Yeah.
So what's the timeline on this, Matt? Like, so this is filed. I mean, we talking months, we talking years?
Generally, I don't know how quick it's going to be. It is a hot button, as you saw. So that following up on the main story, what happened was they had this confrontation. And I think that night, the Department of Education put out a tweet saying, we are opening an investigation into the state of Maine in this particular school district. So it happened quickly when they want to happen quickly. Now, what I suspect is happening is that this is happening tens of thousands of districts across the country. And what they might do is turn around and say, hey, just FYI, if you don't have a policy that protects women, you have to put one in place. And if you don't put one in place, you're going to have federal funding cut off. They might do it just summarily because in many districts in the state of Michigan, many have a policy right to the contrary. Many are hiding behind a 2016 letter put out by the Michigan Department of Education, which is horrific. Okay, this letter, which predates Trump even being in office. This was in 2016. And it said things like, if a child changes their gender, it's not the parent's business to say yes or no. And it's like, first of all, where do you come up with that? And that violates state law. Michigan has a law, MCL 380.10, that says very clearly parents decide the course of their children's education, period. Right? It doesn't say parents in connection with schools and community activists are on their side. It says parents. And here's the Michigan Department of Education ignoring that and saying, no, this is where we're hewing to this ideology. So I'm guessing it's going to be a month or two before things fit. But what I suspect is that some districts are going to see this and they're going to say, we're not taking that fight. We are not going to put our federal funding at risk. We did, in fact, have this jammed down our throats by the state, by the feds, and by various law firms around the state saying, you must do this. This is very important. There's a big law firm that does this, and they put out a letter in 2023 saying, absolutely, you must change your policies immediately to hew to the Biden administration interpretation. Trump comes along, and what does their letter say this year? Oh, it's complicated. I think you should hire us and have us look at the facts, and then we'll tell you what to do.
Geez. And obviously, is the teachers' unions behind most of this too? I mean,
I don't think so. Because the problem with the teachers' union is they have this national push. But at the same time, the rank and file. My parents were both teachers. I can tell you what a 5th grade math teacher wants to do. She wants to teach 5th grade math. Okay. She doesn't want to have this stuff jammed down her throat either. She wants to be able to handle all her students individually, deal with their concerns, and teach them what they need to teach. And all this other stuff is extraneous, and it's strapped on to the same existing school day. So they add this, we got to talk about this. We got to, how is our children's mental health? How is their emotional well-being? Are they fed? Do they have a clinic in there? Yeah, that's all great, but that's in a school day. And when you add stuff to the school day, something else has to come out. And then you can't look at the test scores and go, I wonder why we're not performing. So I think the rank and file teachers are going to welcome this, because it crystallizes back down to their job, which is to teach, which they love doing, and most of them are very good at. And the other thing about it is there start to be a reckoning that this stuff isn't free, that maybe teaching staff, you didn't get the raise you were looking for last year because you sat on your hands when they hired all these crazy people to implement these policies. We had somebody hired in our district, my local district. She makes $170,000 a year. And I'm thinking, that's 3 elementary teachers we could add to lower class sizes and focus education. That's tons of books. We could have done all of that. Instead, what do?
Push the radical ideology. So, a lot of the teachers get a lot of flack, and they kind of get grouped into this hole of all of these teachers are bad. And I stood up, I said, that's not the case. We have a very small, in my humble opinion, I want to ask this question to you, is it's a very small minority of the teachers who are kind of pushing this stuff that will die on the hill of this radical ideology. What % would you say of teachers? Like, what's your guess? Like, we have like 95% of the teachers are like, hey, I just want to teach math. I want to teach history. Keep the rest of this garbage. Let the parents deal with it. What % would you say that those teachers kind of like think that?
Oh, it's got to be 95% plus. And I'll tell you, the one thing that people don't remember is that in 2012, we passed right to work in this state. All right. And now it's been crystallized for teachers because they're government employees. But a lot of them left the union because the union wasn't doing for them what they wanted. So they just left. So what was remaining generally were more of the activist wing of the teaching staff. And of that, it's only a percentage of that, but they don't want to be called out. They don't want their national union to be calling them out and saying, hey, what are you doing here? You got to support this. And you and I were both very active 5 years ago when we were talking about COVID. And you saw in that era some of the most ridiculous, preposterous connections between teaching and education and all this other left-wing nonsense that went along with it. I can tell you, I had dozens of teachers reach out to me privately and say, hey, just let you know, I support what you're doing. I can't say it out loud because I'm going to get yelled at and punished and ostracized, but I support what you're doing. And I would always say, thanks. I kind of realize it and know it, because every time you make a teacher's life easier, they appreciate it. And one of the things that makes a teacher's life easier and makes them better at their job is taking things off their plate, not adding things to their plate. I don't have, there's a kid that has gender dysphoria. It's not the math teacher's job to figure that out. And if you got the kid doesn't, you need to, in the 2016 letter, for example, it said very particularly, teaching staff should honor the pronoun choices of the child with gender dysphoria. Well, that's disruptive to the classroom. I'm sorry, because that kid knows it, and they're going to keep pushing the teacher to prove that they know, that they're going to follow along.
Yeah.
You know what the teacher should do? The teacher should do whatever the teacher thinks they should do. That's what I think.
Absolutely. And speaking of teachers and administration, and I want to highlight Wixom Elementary School and Walled Lake Consolidated Schools, which is also on your list, correct?
It is. That was filed this week. We had a couple parents come and speak out, and they've raised this. Several of them have raised this repeatedly in the school. It's been raised by school board members, and they've ignored it. And they read off a piece of paper that says, the state, Larson, we can't do anything, instead of stopping and thinking and saying, okay, are we ready to take this risk? So that was filed early this week.
Awesome. I'm going to highlight it right now.
Hello, my name is Gabi Tiaga. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I listened to last month's meeting and would like to highlight a few public comments. A woman spoke and stated that she was a retired Board of Education member. Last I heard, she wasn't retired, she just didn't get voted in, but semantics. As a valued member of this community, I think her focus during public comments would be more helpful on literally anything else than the comments from another adult on Facebook. She could possibly shift her comments to helping the district with our test scores or how to hire more paras. A gentleman got up and spoke of compassion. I quote, "Have some compassion." I would tell him this movement that is being pushed to be kind and compassionate, which is misguided. What about being kind to our girls and having compassion for them? This district no longer has the daddy dollar dance for our girls based on the view of being more inclusive. In an effort to be more inclusive, the district has become highly exclusive. Others spoke of President Trump's new executive orders and how they affect our children. Yet I failed to hear them mention keeping boys out of girls' sports and defending girls from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. Are those executive orders not as important? At the last meeting, I spoke on the fear-mongering, Nazi-ranting leftist adults. I want to make something evident to everyone. The statement from the gentleman was highly anti-Semitic. To stand at this podium and speak about a Jewish woman who also happens to be a parent in this district for questioning a book. To say to her and all of us, the Nazis started with book banning, which led to the burning of people. For this man to dare to compare Jewish parents and other parents to Nazis blows my mind. How this is allowed goes completely against everything this community should stand for. But alas, they allow it. They thank and applaud him for his words. Shayna is my friend and continues to take it in the teeth for everyone. No one comes up here and stands up for her. I know she doesn't need it, and I would think less of myself if I didn't. On February 13th, a guidance memo was sent from the State of Michigan Department of Education, Superintendent Michael Rice, to all Michigan public school superintendents and directors. He's advising them not to follow President Trump's orders and federal Title IX laws. They keep saying, I quote, "All children, no exceptions, deserve safe, welcoming schools. All have the right to be free from bullying and discrimination. To the absolute best of our ability, we as educators have the responsibility to ensure these rights for our schools." But they don't mean it, because they certainly don't care about the safety of our daughters. So I ask our superintendent, where does this district stand? Will you make a simple yes or no statement that this district will support Title IX? Will any of the board members make the same statement? Also, what is the actual point of having a Title IX coordinator if this district doesn't
15
follow
seconds,
federal
please
laws?
wrap up.
Sounds like a waste of money to me. Everyone on this board ran for their spot. You sit up here and do nothing but talk about whichever play is happening at the time. 3 people wanting to make positive changes in this district are sitting
Thank
at
you
home.
for your comments. Please
You're
wrap
supposed
up.
to represent us, and you do nothing but
That's
give us
time, ma'am.
word salads and hide
Please
behind
wrap up.
cop-outs. I was getting there. Thank you.
It's amazing, like we talked about. But this, I've watched a couple of the other parents, and that school board got really emotional. I mean, there is a lot going on. There's people resigning. There's kids not safe. I mean, kids were walking through the parking lot, not accompanied by teachers. I mean, it's a hot mess over there right now. What's going on at Wixom Elementary School and Walled Lake Consolidated Schools?
They have quite a few issues. My understanding is they made a hire of a principal that was being questioned because this person had a record of not really doing what they're supposed to do, and that record existed prior to the hire and then continued after the hire. I don't really want to comment on that too much because I don't know the facts firsthand. She does reference books. I can talk a little bit about books because that's a big issue that parents bring up. First of all, I find almost intolerable the term book ban. I did not realize that my child's classroom in the elementary was, in fact, the Library of Congress that has every single book ever published in the United States. Oh, it doesn't? Oh, that's weird. So they have to make choices between what books they have on the shelf. A book is not banned if you can buy it from Amazon. Okay, so let's start there. Second of all, parents should know help may be on the way. There is a case before the United States Supreme Court called Mahmoud, and it involves, I believe it's in Oklahoma. It is parents who had objected based on sincerely held religious beliefs on LGBTQ content and books in their school. And basically what they said is that, it was kind of elementary level books, and they were talking about this stuff and you can change your gender and all that kind of stuff. And they said this We would just simply like the right to opt out, please. And the district told them no. And that has made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will hear arguments on that on April 22nd, and they'll probably rule by June. And if they rule, as I think they probably will, one of the biggest proponents of parental control in education is Amy Coney Barrett. And I think they will rule pretty handily that parents get to make that choice. Now, that's going to be interesting for parents here in Michigan, because a lot of them say, I would like, please, a list of the materials that are taught in the classroom. And they're told no. But you can't opt out if you don't know what's being taught. So people might, pursuant to that, get that right again. And if they do, and if districts dig their heels in and won't comply, we'll be right back at it. But right now we're concentrating on Title IX because that's an easy one. That law has existed on the books for 50 years. And for 50 years, it's protected the rights of young women. And whether Michael Rice or any of these other people wanted, but I mean, he wrote a memo, and I reached out to two colleagues of mine that are on the State Board of Education. And I said, go in and ask him what lawyer gave him that opinion, because that's a legal opinion. And I'd be curious to see why the superintendent of schools is issuing letters with legal opinions without getting legal advice.
Wow. And what's happening, I've seen it with my kids and their friends and everything else, is these kids are so sick of this stuff. And they're just basically, they're grooming kids to be conservatives. I mean, that's what's happening, because these kids are just so fed up. They're like, I just want to concentrate on this. I want to leave all that. I do not care. But as they continue to force feed it, these kids more and more, the future voting blocks, by the way, the majority they're just turning conservative. And we saw that in the Trump election. And I'm hoping to see that here in the state of Michigan in 2026, as long as we message and get the right candidates to run with that message, we are going to dominate the election. But man, oh man, we need the right candidates to run. That's for sure.
That's right. And it's one of the few bright spots out of COVID. This is sort of flashback to the 1970s, right? In the 1970s, a whole generation of people concluded what? They concluded that the government lied to them again and again. And they did. And that sort of went by the wayside. And maybe you and I were brought up, because our parents were in that era, we were brought up kind of skeptically, and that really wasn't existing. Well, now they do, because they were lied to, and they know it. Yeah. Because they walk around and they're like, why did I miss the 7th grade? Why did I miss my graduation? Why did they tell me to put a mask on if they knew it didn't work? Why did they shut my school down once I crossed the border into Indiana, their school was open? And what they've done is generalize from that to say, hey, when I get this story from the media, from the government, I don't believe it. I start with that healthy skepticism that with parents, we try to instill in our kids. They don't believe what you read, right? Yeah. And now they don't. And what happens is, if you watch, you and I were talking about Whitmer and what she does on Twitter, and it's just imaginary, it's made up. And the difference is, she says one of these imaginary things. It's like watching Baghdad Bob is what it is. Everything's awesome. We're the best schools in the country. And behind her, there's a big sign that says number 42.
Yeah.
And she doesn't get away with it anymore. And that's why she's going to New York, and that's why she's going to DC, because maybe there you can get away with it. But here, locally, I'll put it this way. If she ran for president, she doesn't win the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
She does not win her home state, because people know what she did, how she lied, and the mess that she's left behind. I almost feel sorry for the Democratic Party because of the mess that she has left behind. And we just have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And there's a lot of people running. Now we have Gilchrist throwing his hat in the ring, Jocelyn Benson. Dugan is running as an independent, obviously. The Republican race on our side is starting to shape up a little bit. There's still a lot of rumors of who's running, who's not. So that's going to be interesting how that all plays out. But man, oh man, and Megan Reckling was on the show, I think last week, talking about, one of the most important spots is the Secretary of State. We have to win that back. And she's spot on with that, because the Michigan Supreme Court, what is that? It's heavy. Yeah, 6-1. I mean, we're going to feel the ramifications and repercussions of that for the next decade. We really need to start getting some people in there to at least balance that back out, because we all know they don't rule on the Constitution. They rule on their political ideology, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be that way. Matt, what's next for you, man? Obviously, your getkidsbacktoschool.org is doing good. You're making a difference. I mean, do you guys need help there? Are you looking for volunteers? What's going on?
What I need is, if there are parents out there, and like I said, website, getkidsbacktoschool.org, there's a join us button. Click on it. If you are a parent out there and your district has a written policy that allows boys with gender dysphoria and the boys in the girls' locker room or bathroom or to play girls' sports, reach out to me, because we're doing more and more and more of these. If you and I talk a month from now, I'm probably going to tell you that there's 20 of these.
Wow.
Because I don't think they're backing down until the dam breaks. And once the first district says, we ain't taking this risk, we're going to reverse this. We're going to go back to the traditional thing that we had, and we're going to make sure that our money isn't at risk. And there are ones that are sort of like, I think they're on the border of it. Then you're going to see it start going. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this issue by issue. We're going to do this in a deliberate fashion, and we're just going to move education back where it's supposed to be. It's going to take some time, but we've got the president at our back. We've got the public wildly in support of some of this stuff. I mean, the numbers on boys and girls sports is like 85-15, which I don't know who the 15 people are who support 15% who support that, but it's a wildly supported issue. And school districts can either get out of the way and do it the right way, or they're going to get run over by, not by me, not by little old me, not by parents who they ignore, but by the United States government.
And this is a call out to all my followers out there. Is people are always asking, what can I do? Well, he just told you exactly what you could do. And I put the website and the link to the website in the description of this live. It's getkidsbacktoschool.org. Get involved. If this is happening in your school district, this is your opportunity to stand up. And Matt, hey, when that dam starts to break and you have that first school that kind of gives in and does what's right, by the way, get a hold of me. Let's bring you out. Let's bring you back on the show. And let's break it, because courage is contagious.
Yes,
and just like you said, like when one school district says, you know what, we're not dealing with this garbage anymore. Let's follow through. Let's do what's right. We're not going to lose our federal funding. You're going to see other ones follow. And I think that would be a great show for you and I to do, because people need to hear what's going on, because I wasn't even aware of a lot of the things that you said today. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I can't wait to have it happen.
Yeah, man. Let's put it hopefully soon, yes, right? Soon, I would love a text from you next week says, hey, I got to come back on.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Can't wait.
Awesome, brother. Hey, thanks again for everything that you do, man. We appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks much.
Yes, sir. Wow, that's what the Grassroots Army is about. Matt has been in the fight since the beginning. You know, it's ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's how we win. And that's how we continue to gain back lost ground, is for folks like that to stand up, to get involved, to organize, to activate. Michigan, America's greatest asset. That's all of you. That's we, the people. And so we'll continue to update you with up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information. I'll continue to bring folks on as much as I can. This Thursday, in a couple of days, Congresswoman Lisa McClain will be coming on the show to update us with what's going on. I'm really excited for that interview, because I have some questions that I like to ask. Is number one is, how can we get Congress off their butts to sign into law all these executive orders? That I think is very, very important. So look forward to that interview on Thursday. Let me tell you exactly what time that's going to be. I have it right here. It's going to be at 10:45 a.m. Okay, so hang in there. We're going to continue to take back that lost ground, and we're going to win this fight. God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan. Of course, and always, God bless these United States.